Welcome back, everybody, to Disc Media, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting a business from the ground up. And today we're going to get into a little bit of a topic that I think is really important for a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, and you never really quite know. Here's what I mean by that. You know, oftentimes we start a business and we think about how we're going to communicate to our customers, how we're going to market to them, how we're going to sell them, how are we going to develop our product and promotional materials to resonate. And all of that is really good. We should be thinking about those things. But then what happens sometimes is a crisis ensues. What do we do? So then sometimes we have an internal employee that goes rogue. What are we going to do? How are we going to get this messaging positioned in a way that ultimately helps the company get through? But then also, how do we communicate to investors? How do we communicate to shareholders and stakeholders? How do we make sure that we're staying on brand, right? And what that means. Well, today we have somebody who's a specialist, an expert in this field, somebody who has worked in communications and does communications for all kinds of things. We're going to kind of explain a little bit of what that means and why I say that. Welcome to the show today, Joshua Altman. Joshua, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So, I was kind of teeing you up there as a communications expert. And do you mind sharing with us a little bit of, why I say that, what your background is and what brings you here, what you guys focus on today?
So our firm, beltway.media, we are fractional chief communications officers. And that focuses on really two big buckets, and that's shaping perception and building and maintaining trust. And I do that with this firm through this unusual background for somewhat in the consulting field. I started as a journalist. I started as a multimedia producer doing video, photo, web production, audio at a newspaper. Covering Congress, I was with the Hill newspaper. I left that. I thought I would be a freelance reporter and then go back to a newsroom. While I was trying to be a freelance reporter, someone approached me about doing a corporate project. What they really wanted was someone who had a technical background and a content background. And that's what we brought. Did that project. Then there was another one. And I saw there was this need for the combining of this technical knowledge with communications and content skills and bringing those together for specifically startups and small and medium businesses. And that brought us to where we are today. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't I sat down and decided one day, this is what we're going to do. We got here sort of accidentally.
So you kind of picked up work along the way, kind of one thing leads to another. And I think that happens a lot of times when you do well with a project, right? People find a reason to keep you around and do more. But, what do you think it was that kind of resonated with some of the early work that you guys were doing?
It was that combination of a visual media, production skills, technical abilities, with the content, the narrative, and the storytelling, and really bringing it together, but also being able to connect and communicate with different stakeholders. The business side of it, who was concerned with, everything from plans and bottom lines and budgets, to their web developer teams, if we were doing a video, and how that would affect their website and what the requirements were on the technical side, and bridging that gap. And they didn't have that at that time. We brought it. And that was really the first kind of success, was we saw that they wanted someone who could do both of those.
So out of curiosity, what was the timeline around this? Was this like kind of as people were becoming more aware of the value and the impact of social media and, kind of coincided with that?
Social media was well developed by that point. Mobile was getting a lot easier. So when I first was starting, and there's this great picture somewhere of me managing a live stream where every camera had to have its own laptop hardwired
Oh my
that were
gosh.
then hardwired networked together. And then we had to get dedicated high-speed internet lines from venues that no one else could use for us to actually get the stream out. So that was the time period that this was all starting. Now, of course, we all just bring our iPhones and they connect to each other, and you use an iPad to switch it and you're good to go. No wires involved. We didn't have enough chairs to support all the laptops. So you see this picture of me is sitting on the floor trying to switch this because we did not have enough places to sit. We used them all for the equipment to hold it at that point. So that was
Yeah, it's funny. I was at a conference recently, and it was for people who do YouTube and podcasting and things like that. And there was a guy. He had it was, I wouldn't even call it a backpack. It was smaller than that, but it was a mobile cellular network that he could live stream. He live streamed basically almost 24/7, but it's all in this nice little compact thing. And he had his little like DJI Osmo connected to it, and he was just live streaming the
battery
whole time.
life is really one of the biggest limitations on that. Is the charge, it cannot die. You need to keep going. You're limited by your battery and signal now, and signal is better than ever.
Yeah,
bandwidth is available.
Cool. He kind of had it set up so that if the signal dropped, then it automatically switched to like a be right back screen and played some video clips, and then it would come back on, and then he was good to go again.
Yeah. So that was really the time period where this was starting. Social was there. It was established, but it was still kind of clunky to do a lot of things. Nowhere near as seamless and easy as today.
Yeah. The world has definitely changed in that regard. Well, so as you guys as you work with founders today, a lot of times, people talk about brand and talk about communication and talk about, something. It's almost to the point where I'm getting to hate this word, but when people say the branding is on point, right? Part of what you do is I guess helping to craft and communicate that narrative. But what goes into your development process for kind of sussing that out for people?
Well, you just said kind of two of the big words, narrative and brand. The first one is story. So we really take companies through this kind of three-tiered structure: the story, narrative, and brand architecture. So story is the stuff that happened. It is. Then you have, narrative, which is the once upon a time version of it. It's the nicely constructed. It answers the questions. And then the brand, to keep it simple, I call it the swag. It's the stuff. It's the things people engage with. And if you were to Google what are the elements of brand, it'll come up with a much more comprehensive definition than the swag. But for the purposes of keeping this simple, that's just how we think of it. Is, the story is what happened. The narrative is the once upon a time that answers questions, and the brand is swag that people engage with. And a lot of people start thinking about communications when they have a need for brand. They're at that last stage. And when you're doing that, you've started too late. You need to start doing it at the story stage.
Yeah, it starts with building that foundation. So when you're brought into the mix, like what are some of the things that you find are the common, we got to stop here, we got to go back, we got to, reestablish a starting point because where we're at right now isn't going to work for where we want to go.
Well, it's very rare you can just reestablish the starting point. It happened. It happened. I mean, you could do a rebrand and a relaunch and kind of get into people's minds fresh. But what happened. So when you're coming in and you're starting and you want to start with brand, we backtrack you. We start a conversation of who are you? Who is the company? What is your story? Tell me what happened. How did you start it and why? And from there, we start putting the pieces together into the narrative. That's that nice version of it. Once we have that, we're like, now we can start getting those elements that people will engage with directly. and that's the brand. And a lot of it is just conversations with founders and early employees and getting them talking about it, because this is something that excites them. There's a reason they're doing it. And that's what we're trying to tap into when we start asking these questions. And we get it. And for every company, it's different. For some people, it's going to be, I got frustrated doing a thing and I just started to fix it. And then I saw other people were. Okay, we can, translate that into your narrative, into your brand. Other people are going to say, I had a travesty in my life. I reset. This is where I ended up. That's something that we can really communicate with people. But that why matters.
As I think about that, a couple things I kind of reflect on, which is, it seemed there for a while, and we're moving away from this, but it seemed there for a while, like every company was trying to be your friend. And the messaging was all about, we're part of your family. We're part of your friend group. We're part of your inner circle. Like that was all, it. And now it all seems to be around, be genuine, be authentic, be yourself. And it just kind of makes me wonder, do those kind of things factor into the development of what you guys do? Like kind of looking at where, what the buzz is around, like, how do you cut through the noise of, and how did some of these things kind of become the trend?
It's cyclical. You always hear the phrase fashion is cyclical. It always comes back. These trends too, they come, they go, they come back, something replaces them. That's going to always happen. What we're going to look at is the type of company. No one is going to believe that a B2B SaaS is there to be your friend. It's a tool. We use it. It's helpful. You can position it as, we are helpful. We are helping you solve a problem. But you're not inviting the software to dinner with your friends. It's not going to be that relationship. But a software that, helps you, stay aware of someone who you are, taking care of, if you're a caregiver, that kind of software, that tool, that's going to be positioned very differently. So that's where we're going to be aware of it, is what are you doing? And how can we make that part of your brand and have people connect with it? Authenticity is big right now. We've talked about that in, I think, our last 2 newsletters have been, really around authenticity, because we're just seeing a lot of inauthentic stuff out there, and people are really clamoring for authentic.
So let me drill into that a second, because you sometimes get some forced authenticity, right? I think people are pretty wise to,
They are.
Figure that out really quickly, but it doesn't negate, the pharmaceutical company or, some other corporations still trying to craft the message that way, right? So how are you authentic without trying to look like you're trying too hard to be authentic?
That is the big question. And I had this conversation with clients all the time, especially around video, because my background, I said, was in video production.
Right.
And I was doing, had a lot of equipment that we were carrying around, lights, microphones, tripods, all of it. And people ask me, we're going to do our videos. I train them to do their videos. I have clients all over. So a lot of this is working with them on training. And I'm saying to them, it needs to be good. You cannot have total, garbage quality that people can't see you and they can't hear you and don't understand what you're saying, because they're not going to watch it because it provides no value. But it can't look overproduced either. You can't have, Hollywood cinema level production for your, direct to consumer product. People aren't going to buy that either. They're going to know that this was a little forced. And of course, they know that this is a produced thing, but there's that line. It is different for every viewer. It is different for every company making content. It is a very hard line to find. People who do it well, but there's no this is exactly what you have to do. Follow ABC. Don't do 1, 2, 3, and it'll work. It is much more fluid, and the line is always moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about shows like The Office or Modern Family that,
Yeah.
kind of position it very produced, but position it as if it's kind of off the cuff, versus like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where generally it is very off the cuff, like people just ad-libbing the whole episode. And it's tough. When I think of a business leader trying to do this, I hate to keep using these entertainment analogies, but it just makes sense. It's kind of like when you see the football player trying to read lines on SNL or something, like just comes off really bad because they're not an actor. But
Reading lines is hard. Memorizing lines, these are hard things, but we see it every day.
yeah,
So people don't necessarily realize that could be a skill that they need to learn and practice. It is. That is a tough skill.
yeah, it is. And again, because we're talking about communication, I'm trying to use a lot of references that maybe people can connect with. And I
I try to do the same.
I think of Shark Tank, right? Because if there was ever a show where there's definitely a template to the presentation,
Yeah.
and it doesn't come off as very authentic because people are forcing themselves to follow the template, and it comes off as just so out of their comfort zone at times, unless you naturally, just speak that way. It's almost like a TED Talk, right? There's just like this formatted thing that you do. So how do you get people out
most
of
of
that?
those people have never been on national television before. That's what's really, the big, thing for people in that moment isn't following the template. That's safe. That makes it easy for them. Speaking in that TED Talk style makes it easy because this is probably for most people their first and probably only time on national or global television. And that's going to be scary for the first time. Like they could say it was, natural and great. They're doing it. That's going to be the biggest hurdle that they have to overcome. But in terms of getting, past that, practicing and knowing your material, don't memorize it, but be comfortable with it. Again, that's a fine line, just like what's to produce versus not produced enough. You have to be comfortable and you have to be confident. So sometimes breaking a template, like if someone were to go on Shark Tank and completely break that template you described, that could be effective because you haven't seen it before.
Being in doing this, like podcasting, being on video, putting yourself out there. I have to say, I edit my own stuff. I look at things all the time, and I know you probably shouldn't edit your own stuff, but bootstrapping, that's where we're at. But the benefit of doing that is constantly hearing what you sound like and wanting to get better at it. And
Yes.
trying to avoid the ahs and the ums and just those things that make the audio sound bad. And believe me, if those listening, if you're listening to episodes and you're like, oh, there's if there's some grating behavior, because I know it happens. Like sometimes I listen to podcasts and there's a particular cadence or a tone or a way that a presenter says things, and they just do it repeatedly, and it just gets to a point where it like sits in your ear. Believe me, I hear it too, and I try to work on it.
The only way is to practice it and just keep doing it.
Yeah, true, and that's how you break through, is by pushing through and getting to the point where you are acknowledging it in the moment as it's happening to try and correct it. Because, boy, sometimes you're just not paying attention, and then you listen back and you're like, what the hell was I trying to say there? But thinking about that, so you work with a lot of businesses that, like, for example, you mentioned SaaS a couple times, leads me to believe you probably have clients that are in that data space, right? In the software space. And, software is awesome, and there's some amazing tools out there that are fun and engaging, but then there are some stuff that's a little bit dry. How do you turn data into a compelling story and make that resonate with people?
It depends on what it is. Some things are dry. Your accounting software is dry. I was a customer of one company, and they said, I dealt with their customer service. They said, well, we hope you enjoy our product. My first thought was, you're a utility. If I'm thinking about you, something has gone wrong. This is just a utility thing I'm using every day. If I am thinking about this more than opening the app and checking it, I have a problem. That's a good way to think about it, is can we make this so easy it just falls into the background like a utility? That's how some things are going to work. Others are going to be much more their dashboards. We're using them every day. They are giving you compelling information. And it's going to be differentiating it through that story. The why. Why this software versus that one that does substantially the same thing.
Yeah,
and
because I
sometimes
think
that's going to come down to the person presenting it.
yeah, I think when you think about, for example, one of the very important things that business people do on a regular basis is communicate their financial data, performance data, and kind of what we're looking at moving ahead. As the taping of this podcast, once again, we've been through a tumultuous couple days on the stock market, and what's really weird is companies are reporting great numbers. They're like, we closed out the fourth quarter well, and we've booked revenue, we booked profit, and still it goes down, which is a little nutty, but there's a lot of dynamics of why that happens. When we think about communicating financial data, when you think about communicating the performance of our company, I mean, that seems to me where story really becomes important to, we've got the good things to say, but when you have a challenging quarter, when you have a challenging end of the year, as some businesses have, or let's take, for example, Amazon. Amazon, just went through a massive layoff. One of the things I was talking about recently was, if you are, it kind of makes it very challenging for somebody like in HR, for example. Like, how are you supposed to recruit the best talent into your company when you've just laid off like 30,000 people? How are you supposed to tell a compelling story about this is where you want to spend your career, this is where you want to build your future, when that just happened? Like, how would you message around that?
With HR in that particular example?
But yeah, or something similar.
Well, let's go back to the financials. Because people, they say, we be honest. Talk about the things I did well, but also be honest. You're not going to hide the bad in your financial reporting to your investors, to shareholders, to whomever. You might as well just be straight and upfront with it. Put it in context, give the story, talk about industry trends, do what you need to do, but don't rush through it in your presentation. You're going to get called on it. They know. Don't try and hide it. You're going to get called on it. They know. Acknowledge it. Be transparent about it. Put it in context. If you're talking about that kind of HR example, talk about why the layoffs. We, of course, don't know what Amazon was doing. That's all going to be proprietary to them. We know what they said publicly. But you're going to have to explain. This won't affect your position. This won't do this. We're still building all these things. Whether or not those potential new employees believe you is a very different situation. And that's going to be very much dependent on your audience and who you're talking to.
If you don't mind, and I don't think any of us have any vested interest in Amazon, so we'll talk from a point of speculation and really kind of examining what it is. But looking at that, so some of the things that I'm hearing around this is, Amazon is interested in making some big investments in AI. and there's some capacity that they need to build out from a CPU standpoint, from a data center standpoint, all kinds of stuff like that. And to make room for those investments, there is one of the reasons, again, rumored, have no inside information on this, but there's speculation that a lot of these layoffs were to make room for bigger investments in AI and going that way, because what it means for them. Like they have far better revenues in data centers than they do in, trucks bringing stuff to your home. And so how do you keep the rumors from running away from you? Because if you've got a kind of an undertone of people saying, we know what you said, but the reality is like, here's what you said, here's what you're doing. How do you reconcile that?
Sometimes you're going to just have to let the rumors run. You cannot control them now more than ever. If people are going to say what they're going to say, they're going to speculate, and you're going to get pundits making assumptions. You might just have to let those exist and just keep putting out your good stuff, put out the information that you want to put out, counter when you can, when you need to. If there's a front page story in the Wall Street Journal, that's going to be more than a rumor from a podcaster or a streamer that gets picked up. That you're going to have to acknowledge in some way. And they probably called you for a statement before they published it, so you knew. Sometimes best to let the rumors go, because there's that adage, no such thing as bad press. You're in.
Yeah. I
let them speculate.
I sometimes hear from people like the worst thing you could do is give it attention, because all that does is prolong the impact of it. And, keeping a lid on it, or just to your point, not responding to it is sometimes a better strategy, because, with some of the more high profile things, sometimes a weekend and, a weekend news cycle will dissolve some of the things that are going on.
Market opens Monday morning. Everything else happens Monday morning. People aren't thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. Just depending upon,
or they're thinking about it a lot more. It could go either way.
Well, another strategy I've seen implemented at times is let's drop the bad news just before a holiday weekend.
Yeah, that's common.
So, let it simmer. Talking about that though, like in those high crisis moments where, there has to be some sort of response. What kind of is the qualification for what a crisis response is versus just founder panic?
Depends on the company, depends on the founder. A lot of times what we'll do is we do crisis communications drills. We do prep. They're like fire drills. You do them, you put the binder on a shelf. Metaphorically, they're files on computers, but you hope that you never have to take it and use it. A lot of times, that's what you have to do. It never comes to pass. When there is a real crisis, a lot of it's going to depend on who's involved. Did you get alerted to something by your biggest investor? If you're doing this outside fundraising, that might constitute a crisis. Will people care about it is another big line between founder panic and actual crisis. Because if no one outside the company is going to care, don't worry about it. Be aware of it, of course. Think about it, plan for it, have something ready to go if for some reason it does get legs. But you don't have to throw gas on that fire because no one else is talking about it.
Yeah, I imagine your job becomes difficult when you're working with somebody who feels like they have to have the last word.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I brought up a memory there. But it's challenging because you hope and encourage, and maybe I'll ask this in a little bit of a broad way, because not trying to shine a spotlight on anybody, but if you had to advise, somebody who is ready to go to battle, like they're ready to lay it all out there. They're not gonna let whatever. Like sometimes people get really caught up in the principle of the thing, right? And I hear that sometimes, like, oh, it's the principle of the matter. It's like, well, okay, but you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot, right? You're gonna uh, kind of mess yourself over. How do you rein someone in?
Time. A lot of times, if you just say, we're going to plan for this, strategy session, we're going to talk about it. Let's go. We'll sleep on it, come back. It wasn't as big a deal the next morning anymore. A lot of times you just need to take that beat before you release things, before you make a public statement. That's a good time to breathe. And that often will take one of those people who, needed to have the last word, who was standing on the principle of the thing, back a moment. They have time to talk with their partner. They go home, they have dinner, come back the next day.
So let me ask you this, since you're in this space and you probably have a little bit of a hypersensitive attention to communication and the way we typically find if somebody's in an industry doing something, you pay a little bit more attention to the way things are done. When you think about founders today and the way that they communicate, what are some things, maybe some repeated patterns that you see that you wish people focused on a little bit more to either maybe enhance or to correct?
No one knows about as much about this as you do. Understand that. When you're talking about your company, your product, your area of expertise, that's you. You're the expert. Your investor doesn't know as much as you do. Your potential investors, your potential customers, they don't know as much as you do. So you get really excited about chip architecture and you're explaining this, and it is important to your company. Most customers, if you're selling a Bluetooth device that just connects to someone's phone, they're not interested in the chip architecture. They won't understand it. They don't care. They care how the device works and what it does for them. Understand who you're talking to. What do they care about? That's what you need to be focused on.
So thinking about the work that you all do, where do most of your clients kind of bring you in and leverage what you all do?
They bring us in a little too late. Like I said, you have story, narrative, and brand. A lot of times they bring us in when they're ready to work on brand, or they've already done it and something isn't working. You need to start thinking about communications early, from the very beginning of your company. What are we doing? How do we communicate it to all our different stakeholders? That's potential customers, current customers once you have them, potential investors, current investors once you have them, everyone. Because that's who you're engaging from the very start. And if you do that 180 or you change it up, they'll notice. There's nothing wrong with doing it. But you want to start in the strongest position. That's why we do what we do on our fractional model. Some people need us 5 hours a month. Some need us 20 hours a week. We could start with you at 5 hours a month and grow with you. Because a lot of people, a lot of businesses, they're saying, we don't need this yet. We can't afford it. We're too small. We're only spending a couple hours a week on this. Why bring someone in when we could do it? That's where you need it the most, because you need to start building that very strong foundation.
So when you think about the things that you all are doing today, what is something that is really getting you excited about either some of the people that you're working with or some of the things that you guys are working on?
More how we're doing things. We're being really efficient with a lot of companies. AI is helping with that. We're getting a lot more insights. We're able to try things that we weren't able to try before because we can.
Like what?
Types of campaigns. We can, because before maybe it would take us 3 people, day hours to do this. generate a campaign, a whole proposal. Now we can do some drafts. AI is really good for outlines and drafts. It does not do final products. We do not use it for that. It
Yeah.
cannot produce something even recognizably good for that purpose. But we can get those outlines and turn them into something and for a client as an experiment and try something on a small scale to see if it's going to work very quickly. Whereas before, that might have been 3-4 full human days of work to prepare that. And the client looks at that and says, that's not worth paying for, because that's a lot of money to spend on something that might not get a result. So being able to iterate faster, try things faster, that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I've even found that in my own practice. I use AI every day, and have been for 2 years now. There's a lot that helps you. I always like to say it's an augmentation tool. It helps you become more efficient. It helps you get things done. It helps just churn through some of the stuff that you would burn hours doing. I mean, just before we hopped on today, I had some data that was in a PDF file, and I'm just like, and I just fed it in and said, give me a table. Just give me a table with this stuff. And in a very short amount of time, it takes all the information and puts it into something usable. And now I can move it to the next stage instead of burning all of my time doing stuff like that.
And that's the kind of thing that we were doing. And when clients see that represented as dollars, it's not particularly attractive. When they see how easy we can do, 3 experiments planned, ready to go, and now put those out there, it costs a lot less.
Yeah.
And that means we have more options. Because if those
and
three
more
don't
value
work,
to your customers too, because they're not paying for you to do things that are
copy and paste tables from PDFs to Excel. They're paying for what the human does well.
Right. Which is, and one of the things I've mentioned this on the show before, which is to really fully take advantage of AI. Like if you're going to use it in a creative space, you have to first be good at the thing you're trying to produce. You have to have some skill at it. So if you're going to use it for writing, you first have to be a good writer, because you go from being the writer, the task manager, to the editor and the reviewer. And yes, you're still going to come in and you're going to write, but you are more of a strategic thinker, not the task doer when it comes to working with AI. And you get it to do the menial stuff, and then you get to be the assessor, the strategic judge, to determine what the value of the content in front of you is, and then you tweak it and you shape it and you bring it into your own.
You fact check it.
Oh, 100%. You better fact check it, because believe me, it gets it wrong.
It's given me some
interesting
things over time, which is why we fact check anything that comes out of there. It's good for big, broad outline ideas, publicly available facts. It gets right sometimes. If you need to do a lot of synthesis, double check the results.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it will make assumptions that are not true. I catch it doing that all the time, which goes back to the thing what I was saying before. It's like you have to have knowledge of what you are creating to be able to be an editor and determine whether or not it's moving in the right direction. If you just take it at face value, you're gonna look terrible. It's gonna.
That's why I
said
bad. When we started this part of the conversation, it's great for outlines. It could do some first drafts. It does not do anything we would put in public for ourselves or for clients.
Yeah, it's funny. I recall, at the beginning of last summer, there was a news article that came out. It was supposedly like the 50 best beach reads this summer. And half of the list were authors and books that didn't exist, because the person who put the article together ran it through AI and it just made stuff up. So it's, it can be a challenge. It can be a real challenge. But to that point, taking that into into the world of what you guys do, like, how do you, how would you mitigate that? Like, how, you've got a client who maybe is like, oh, I messed up. Like, I put out this release, or we put out this PR statement, and, we didn't check it. And, it made some promises or talked about some things that just don't exist. Like, how do we come back from that?
Couple of options. There was a company, maybe now this is 15 or so years ago. They did a funny thing for April Fool's Day. Product didn't exist. People thought it was real. This is, of course, well before, ChatGPT. So they made it. Their solution was, people are really excited about this. So they made the thing and sold it. They turned it into reality. That's one option, and it works. Depending on what you're building, of course. This was something that they conceivably could do. That's an option. Another one is own up to it. Just say what you did. We put this through AI. We didn't check it. We're sorry. We'll do better. Sometimes that's the best thing you could do, is just take responsibility, own it, and move forward.
Yeah, I know. Deloitte is kind of learning this lesson. If anybody hasn't heard, Deloitte put out a report for a client, which they heavily leaned into AI for, and it was I believe it had something to do with helping to shape some policy or some public policy. It was for a local government agency, and I could have that even wrong. So here I am just fabricating stuff. But I know that it was Deloitte. I know that the client paid some $400,000 for this report, and it was heavily AI created. And as it went public and people are starting to read through it, they're like, well, this is nonsense. Like, this doesn't even exist. And, kind of landed in hot water as a result of that. It's real tough when you're a company like that, when you're a consulting company and these things happen to you. But, I think one of the things that is really challenging in the environment that we're in right now is there are so many tools. There are so many options. There are so many ways. We were actually talking before we got started here about how, the technology has just improved from when you first got into the work that you were doing to, scaling to where it is today. How do you make sure that we're kind of staying in check, if you will? Like, I know that you guys mentioned that you use AI, not in your final product, so I don't want to put that out there, but just in the way of helping to create efficiency. Are there any other tools that you guys are leveraging that help with efficiency, productivity gains, improving how you serve your clients?
Nothing that would probably be particularly unusual. Things like, depending on what our client uses, we're often on their systems for a lot of things. Google Docs, Office 365 tools, shared calendars, pretty much the same things that any company is using to stay efficient. Yeah, other than, kind of the really big companies like those, we're using online tools, pretty much the same project management tools that are industry standard across, the US, across the world right now, because that's what people are using. If you start layering too many, then you have problems, we've noticed. There's a line between a good amount of process and a right amount of tools, and too much process for the sake of process. And we're throwing on another tool because one day we kind of had a problem and now we need to think that some other tool is going to solve it. All that's going to do is add another layer of complexity in some cases. In many cases, we try to keep it as simple and easily accessible as possible. There are times where a Post-it note is the best solution to some things.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of times there's a feeling that software is somehow going to solve the problem, and oftentimes what software does is just it just highlights where things are wrong.
Yeah, which is why we try to keep it really simple. If our client is using, they're in the Google ecosystem, we're just using their Google tools because we're really embedded with the team.
You had alluded to this a little bit before, but you guys kind of scale with the business need. You don't necessarily, if they're not in a place right now where they can bring you on full time, they can do fractional work with you guys. When you think about like your clients that you work with today, what does that mix like? I mean, I would imagine that they might bring you in fractionally, and then as they grow,
that's where
they kind of
it
lean
is.
into you more.
Most people start off with that, probably 5 hours a month is really the lowest. 5 to 10 hours a month, growing to 20 to 30 a week. If we put ourselves out of a job because you've grown so much, you need your CCO in-house full time, we are successful. We help you transition that.
So as people are crafting brand, crafting story, thinking about, that origin story that every good superhero has, this is where you all help to develop that focus. Where, if you had to, I always like to ask the Sophie's Choice question, and I never expect you guys to just, or anybody to just pick one. But do you have an example of some work that you guys have done that you're exceptionally proud of, or where you took it to? It doesn't even necessarily have to be the biggest thing that you've done, but maybe the thing that has the most resonates with the most meaning for you.
One particular company, we were brought in, they were very established. It wasn't a startup as much as a local medium-sized business. Very established company, been around 10, 15 years, brought us in, they were trying to grow. Ultimately, they sold, owning family retired because they grew enough that they could step back. And that was a great outcome. Our goal was to help them grow and get to their next goal. They did.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's good to know that that the work is effective. And I think for a founder, sometimes an exit is that's the best thing to try and take you to a point where you can have something comfortable to do, either whether you go do something else or just enjoy the rest of your life.
Sold and retired is what they said. I don't think they don't know if they decided to go to the beach, RV around, but that was their goal. Eventually, was just grow to that point where they could really step back, and they did.
That's awesome. Well, Joshua, let me ask you this. So if people are interested in Beltway Media, interested in the things that you're doing, how do they get in contact with you?
The best way, email,jaltman@beltway.media, no.com. Visit our website, beltway.media, again, no.com. We have some free tools on there that you could try out. We have some self-assessment. Some of them are very particular for startups, for cybersecurity companies. You could also contact me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Joshua I. Altman. We love to talk with you guys. Just shoot us a message.
Awesome. And then for those listening, I will have all of that information in the show notes as well, so that give you some easy access to that. And Joshua, I have to say, love the conversation. It's really one of those things that I think that a lot of, when we talk about brand, we talk about marketing, as you've mentioned, people just come in at the late stages of it and don't think about the foundations of it. And, sometimes it's too late once that, well, I shouldn't say it's too late.
It's never too late.
It just means it's more work.
It's a lot more work if you're starting later than if you're starting with us doing 5 hours a month at the very beginning when you are getting started in bootstrapping.
100%. Absolutely. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for your time, for the insight, for the information. Folks, if you are looking to get in touch with Beltway, it's beltway.media. Again, no.com, which is one of those things, even with our own daily pitch, it's .news. A lot of people put in .com, but dailypitch.news for our website. I want to thank everybody for checking this episode out. A couple of reminders as we wrap things up. Number one, if you want to check out my new book, 10 Topics to Help Managers, Leaders, and Entrepreneurs Get Better at What You Do, let's go to my website, benolmos.com. We have a link there, all the information. Buy the book, check it out. Wonderful project to have worked on, and want to share that with everybody. Also, our goal this year is to hit 100,000 subs by the end of 2026. So we're getting there. We're climbing. Please share, like, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell the people you don't like more than the people you do like, because that will send them here this way even faster. So thank you guys for checking this out. Thank you much for tuning in to Disc Media, a startup story. And we look forward to catching you next time. Have a good one. We'll talk later. Thanks for listening to Disc Media, a startup story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Disc Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@discmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes, or information about our guests, by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.